I'm resident of Collinwood, Joel Saints for YouTube, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray, author of the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound, and joined by my buddy Gordon Dymowski. We're here to talk episode 750, another Dark Shadows milestone. This episode is narrated by Terry Crawford. Really, really good job. I love her performance in this episode. She's getting, fired basically by the Collins family. They're giving her severance, or, at least Judith is. Apparently Edward put in the money. That was nice of him. But she's still canned at the end of the day. David Selby is just gold in this episode. He knows the curse is coming. He's scared to death, and he should be. Magda and Sandor in this episode. I just like how Sandor looks in this episode. He looks just really nice. I don't know what it is about him.
He'd be very flattered.
Sarah David looked really good as Sandor. I know some people say they didn't like the way he looked, but I do like the way he looked. I thought he looked really nice and really spiffy. And I love the point that he brings up in this episode, Sandor does, is he wants to get out of Collinwood because he's afraid that the curse will come back on them as well. Magda assures him that's not the case, that the curse won't affect him. It won't kill them. It'll only kill the Collinses. And Magda wants revenge on the Collins family for what they did to her sister. She doesn't just blame Quentin, she blames everybody. So what did you guys think of this overall episode? Patrick?
An overalls episode. Now, was this Green Acres that we? Oh, the overall episode. Yeah, okay. I was hoping maybe there's a thing because Green Acres and Dark Shadows actually have a lot in common. But that's neither here nor there. I think it's a great episode. This episode, if we look at Dark Shadows kind of maturing, so episode 100. I don't even. Was that about the pen?
Yeah, that was the pen episode.
Okay, so we got that out of the way. And then 250, they're kind of going as far as they can just into kind of poppy comic booky goofiness. They got a Frankenstein's monster in the basement and he's waving chicken around. There's some missing earrings and, so they are here that they were seeing exactly how wild they could get, In 1897, they have the confidence of knowing they can get as wild as they want to. They're not going to be making sallow, but, close enough compared to the pen. And so I really I appreciate the comfortable, sad confidence that they now have. To me, the iconic shot is in the last one we saw is just Barnabas kind of standing behind Willie, or Barnabas fighting with Adam or something like that. In this one, it is Quentin leaning against the windowsill, staring at the sky, wondering what it's going to do to him. And that they are able to write not existential dread, but sort of, although that's in there, just existential bemused resignation. I think that's really something. It is a languid episode in its suffering. It's very sophisticated. So that's my thought. I think it represents an astounding leap forward for the show.
Mm-hmm.
Gordon?
I think that the great thing about this episode is that you can tell that, and in looking at all the episodes the landmarks leading up to this, the writers mastered a formula for writing Dark Shadows. Because in episode 100, it was like your typical soap opera. Everybody in the cast has to have a moment. And there's, it's like, you don't really go anywhere except, okay, there's a lost pen and Roger might have killed Bill Malloy. In 250, they realize, okay, well, we really need to ramp up the tension. So we're going to do an arc. So that the arc is Maggie going from I'm not Josette, I'm Maggie Evans, to about to stake Barnabas, and she's discovered. And there's a nice three-hander where she's playing the game of she's letting Barnabas and Willie know, hey, I'm Josette, but she's asserting her own identity. So I think that character arc always comes through. In 500, you've got little moments between all the characters, and the arc goes from Adam being teased and Barnabas. It starts with Sam Evans going blind. Barnabas feels guilty about that, but then at the end, Barnabas starts beating Adam, just out of not mistaken identity, but he jumps to a conclusion. But you've got the moments with Willie and the chicken leg. You've got Julia giving sedatives, as she always does. And I'm sure, too, that the reason they had her giving sedatives is that they realized with episode 100, that's so boring, that was putting the actors to sleep anyway.
I was about to say, she didn't have videotapes of the Penn storyline, so she had to use something to put people to sleep.
Right. And in 750, you've got that great arc of Quentin going from, I'm not sure what's going to happen, to it finally happening. You've got the plot of, okay, Beth is kicked out. Joan Bennett gives major Roger Collins energy as Naomi. She's like, hey, I'm only doing this because Edward wanted you to pay. As far as I'm concerned, you are out of here. Yeah. And I'm going to say this publicly. Joan Bennett invented resting bitch face.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You've got the Sandor and the Magda stuff, which is just gold. Because it's like you've got these two characters who are not only are they outsiders, but they're not really antagonists, but that they're not Collinses, and they're probably paragons of sanity compared to them. You've got Quentin trying to bribe Sandor, and it's my favorite scene in the whole episode because Sandor's like, yeah, it hurts me to turn down $10,000, but I got a wife and she knows magic and she's going to kick my ass.
Sure.
And then the last few minutes when Quentin is trying to get Beth out of there, sun goes down and it starts happening.
I mean, when the Ferengi turn down money because there's something more important, that something is really important.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is Dark Shadows realizing, hey, we got this.
Yeah. You also have in this episode the reason Quentin keeps wanting to leave. He has to pack his bags, which he does. He tells Beth, you need to decide to come with me. She goes, I'll decide later. Then she does decide, but she wants to go into town. And the reason she wants to go is because of the kids. She wants to go see Quentin's kids without him, without telling him.
Go on, and then I have a question.
She doesn't make it there because Quentin, he obviously starts having pains, and she wants to go get the doctor. He's lying on the floor. David Selby does a really good job of the pain. I think one of my favorite moment of this episode, and I want to get Patrick's as well because I know Gordon's, is the fact that you have dread, but you also we know there's going to be a werewolf. We know that there's going to be a curse of a werewolf, but the fact that they build it completely back up, like even though they know we've heard about the werewolf is coming, like we've never even heard of it. It's just pure magic by the writers. It's a lot of fun. And the fact that they build it so suspenseful in this episode with David Selby dreading the whole day was really, really gold standard acting by David.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Go ahead, Patrick. What was your question? I'm sorry.
I'm sure there's an obvious answer to it. It just sometimes I choose to have it elude me. what does Quentin see in Beth? I mean, we can make all sorts of jokes about, how she is off screen or whatever, the character. But what a simp.
Well, she brings this up actually in the episode in a sense. She goes, "You don't love me. You just don't want to be alone. You're not a loner." You brought this up in a Dark Shadows Daybook that Quentin is somebody who doesn't want to be alone. He loves to be part of a pack.
Sure, yeah, he is the wolf without a pack.
Right. When he becomes the werewolf, he doesn't have that anymore. Well, it's sort of, this episode is really foreboding, teasing the fact that what Beth is saying is true, that Quentin does not want to be alone. He's not a loner. He has to have somebody around him. And he owns this too, by the way, to her. He goes, "You're right." And because he owns it, she decides to go with him. But the decision becomes way too little, way too late, because now I want to go to town, because even though you told me the truth, I'm not going to tell you shit about your kids, at least not yet. It's just cold. But and again, key thing too, Magda did not know about Jenny's kids. She did not know Jenny had 2 kids. That Quentin already had 2 kids to her sister Jenny. She didn't know this when she put the curse on Quentin in this very episode. By the way, it's so interesting. This is not the same as Angelique cursing Barnabas, where she curses him and then the vampire bat comes in and bites him on the neck. This is a curses put on Quentin, and you're gonna see the effect the next episode, which is so cool. They give you something to come back to, but the fact that they do that is so, to me, it's just so cool. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Go ahead.
No, you're not. It's great. It's great. The cynical part of me, which means me, I love the scene where Beth is really she's really laying into Quentin, and it's exactly the scene that you just quoted. And the thing I would love to see in at least one take on this is she's criticizing Quentin. She's saying, you can never be alone. You're not really interested in me. You're just going to use me up, blah, 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 blah. And for Quentin to go, well, yes, of course. Have we met? I mean, this is, yes, Beth, I don't see the mystery in this. This is, of course, you should know this by now. I'm Quentin Collins. Let me introduce myself. And I was halfway expecting him to do that. And if it had been the Quentin that we met in the first episode of 1897, or maybe the second episode of 1897, that would have happened. That was who Quentin was at that point. But it says a lot that he listens to her.
He's afraid. I mean, that's another part of it too. With this conversation between Beth and Quentin, it's not just that Quentin's wanting to get out the door. Yeah, that's the thing too. He's at his wit's end with everything. Barnabas, who showed up out of nowhere, his grandmother died. You have Jenny dead. Now you have this. You have the gypsy saying something's going to happen to you. We're going to put a curse on you, and you're not going to know what it is until the moon is up. The sun goes down and the moon is up. And like he's worried throughout this entire episode. So for him, he's just at his wit's end. He's ready to get the hell out of Dodge. And you're right. When it's like, have we met? I'm Quentin Collins. I'm the playboy here. I'm James Bond without actually being goddamn James Bond. But the fact that you have this we've talked about how 1841 is the most adult storyline. There's a lot of adult in 1897 as well.
Oh, yeah.
This is one of those heavy conversations that you really got to go back and listen to in episode 750.
Gordon, what do you think?
I think that, I like the fact that Quentin to me is like he's kind of like the character. He's like Barnabas, but with larger huevos. You know what I mean? Barnabas, for all his whining and complaining about Josette, would never say, "Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have fooled around with Angelique. Maybe that had something to do with it." Quentin's like, "Yeah, I'm a player, okay? I am a stone cold player. Sorry, Beth. Women dig me because, well, I got the mutton chops, I got the blue suit. I'm Quentin Collins. And I like the fact that he's so matter of fact about, yeah, I want to get out. And I think the nice thing is that you don't know what the curse is until the next episode. You just know there's a curse, because it would have been anything from haunted by ghosts to, I don't know, I don't know, being forced to hang out with the Trask family, to I don't know, being forced to be replaced by Craig Slocum. But no, we don't know what the curse is until episode 751. And leaving Quentin at that point gives it a little bit more of an edge.
Yeah.
I agree. It's a very powerful episode. Grayson Hall is not to be discounted in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
The passion of her gypsy curse, it was sort of like she watched what Laura Parker did and said, "Oh, okay, that's what you guys want. Hold my drink."
Yeah, and the fact that the way it's the way they do it and the way she does, because unlike Angelique, when Angelique puts the curse on Barnabas, she's doing this because she loves Barnabas and she wants him, but now it's just like, okay, I can't have you, no one will have you.
Sure.
With Magda has a husband who's not sure if the curse will come back at them. And I love that, because when he asked her about it, it's like, I love that, because that's not a character flaw. Why should he know how the curse works? She's the one doing it. Yes, he's a gypsy as well, but it doesn't mean he knows every little spell that she knows.
Yeah. I mean, do we ever see Xandor actually do magic?
I don't think so, but he does. He's more your muscle, or the guy who will pull out a knife, if you will. I do like the fact that when Quentin tries to buy him, it's like, yeah, no. I would gladly. I love what David Tubman says. You would slit someone's throat for that kind of money. Yeah, absolutely, I would. But not my wife. There's my wife who can perform magic. Nick Gordon said, and it's really good how Grayson Hall takes the sand, takes the dirt, has her hands, and we're getting the curse and how she reads it and how they perform it. You have all these different interactions with Sandor, Magda, and Quentin worrying about the damn thing the whole entire episode.
Yeah.
This episode is just pure fun and intensity at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Grayson Hall plays Magda as if she were the lead of the show. And that's not an insult. I mean, she really gives it with gusto and assertiveness, where it's a role like that in any other situation would be like a side character, like a side character, and treated as such. It's like let's just do the stereotype. Let's not make her a character.
Yeah.
Hall makes her a character.
And a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, we get Magda mentioned prior to 1897. Should they have just made Grayson Hall the star of 1897?
You should have made her. I think she is.
Well, I know, but because I do think she gets top billing in some episodes in 1897.
I don't know how the business of that really went. I'm not certain.
Right.
How they determined those things.
Well, it helps if you're the spouse of one of the writers.
Yeah, especially when you're the one who got him the job.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things about 1897 as a storyline is that you really get the sense that I think when the production decided to go back in time, they knew this had one advantage over 1795, which is 1795. You know your end point, and you've kind of led everything through that. I mean, 1795 is the secret origin of Barnabas Collins, so everything has to kind of lead to that. But you know what the outcome is. Here, all you know is, where did this ghost come from in 1969? I think you've got a team that's like that's thinking, okay, well, do we really need to go back to present day? I don't think so. You've got a lead actor who is looking for some time off. You've just hired a second lead who is killing it, especially since he was afraid that if he opened his mouth, he'd be fired.
Yeah.
And given that 1969 culturally was kind of an existential garbage fire that we haven't experienced until 2022, I think the writers are just like, let's just go with this. And I think the fact that you could argue, is Magda the star of 1897? I think she's one of the highlights. I don't think there is a star, and this is a show that doesn't. At this point, Dark Shadows doesn't need a star.
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, there's a Facebook group. I'm going to do an accidental plug here, but so be nice to me. Called Dark Shadows is an ensemble show, damn it. And I think there's really something to that.
And I think that's the one thing that the Penn episode does not have. It's basically, okay, we've got a cast, so we'll give Nancy her moment, we'll give Alexandra her moment, we'll give Mitch his moment, we'll have Louis have his moment, and he and David can have a little father-son fight. There's really nothing there except making the plot. You're getting from point A to point B. At this point, you're not only getting from point A to point B, but you're getting more show for your 20-25 minutes than you would expect. And that's the great thing about Dark Shadows at this point.
Yeah. And I love the fact you have Jen Bennett basically firing Beth in this episode. Like, oh, here's your really just good. Awesome stuff. Is there anything you guys want to add about episode 750?
It is an example of the show being so good. I don't want to say something fatuous like it's better than we deserve, but good Lord, are they creating something special? I think, obviously, everybody's entitled to their opinion. And having said that, I honestly am. I'm sure there are people who don't like 1897, and there are people who, think that it gets away from the core Josette, Barnabas storyline that many people see as being Dark Shadows. I think this is Dark Shadows. I think this is, it is the story. We have seen Barnabas, as a man becoming a god, and how does he handle that? And we have seen him, hold up Enlightenment principles in the face of modernism. Quentin is the voice of modernism. He is the voice of the 20th century. All of the decadence, all of the doubt, all of the questioning of cherished institutions, and to see Barnabas and Quentin evolve together and move together, just, to me, that's Dark Shadows. That's Dark Shadows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the best way I can describe 1897, I'm going to build on something that Patrick has talked about in past episodes, where he was wondering you were about the Secret Storm and why that was longer than Dark Shadows, and you were wondering if there had been a soap opera that came out around the same time. There actually was on the same network, General Hospital in 1963. And don't worry, there is an endpoint to this. And their approach, General Hospital did something different with their storytelling. It wasn't the usual model of a family in a town and you follow their adventures. That was Dark Shadows in 66. General Hospital, they made the hospital the hub so that you could have all these side stories that kind of contribute, and the hospital was where everyone kind of collected. So you might have a patient, his wife's cheating on him, a doctor, he's on drugs, whatever. And I think with Dark Shadows, we see the show becomes less about family travails and more about Collinwood. I mean, the Collins family we'll use Collinwood as the Collins family. That it becomes this kind of center for all these interesting characters to come in. And you also have a point where Dark Shadows stops believing itself to be, I think subconsciously, it starts to deny that it thinks, no, we're not a soap opera. We're a supernatural drama. Mm. And I think that really, at this point in the show, you've got actors who are theatrically trained, who are grateful for the work, and who aren't doing they're not going in and saying, oh, yes, I love my husband, or, oh, I'm worried about my wife. And you've got a meld of really great writing, really great acting. I mean, and at this point, it would not have surprised me if there were conversations about, we're never going back to 1969. We're going to stay in 1897 because it is so interesting.
I don't know why they didn't. I don't think anyone would have objected.
And at least with 1795, once you get to Barnabas turns into a vampire, there's really nothing more to do except treat him in a coffin. Here, you could have easily, there's a version of the storyline where Quentin dies being shot by silver bullets. That would be the wrong thing to do, and I'm glad we live in this universe. But yeah, there's this real sense of it's not just fun and drama, but there's a real sense of we can do no wrong, and a real sense of the show, like really discovering, like, oh, we can do that. There's more of a sense of narrative discovery now, whereas I think maybe with earlier arcs, like the initial Barnabas arc in 1795, it was discovery in terms of special effects, like how do we have a hand coming out of the ground, and it was usually a guy with a straw in his mouth sticking his hand out of the ground. But I think here is where the show's like, what can we do with the show narratively, in terms of acting, and just in terms of overall making it the best 20 some minutes on television.
And they did it.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely did it. It is just this is really the period where I had always liked the show, but this is where the show became something that felt kind of personal.
Mm-hmm.
For me at least. And I really I cherish that.
Okay, here's a fun question. You could have continued the 1897 storyline. Where do you take it?
That's a good question. I think you can. I think probably getting into a deeper layer of gypsy culture beyond King Johnny, and exactly what Petofi did to tick him off. I think that's a lot of it. I think you could easily do, things like the Leviathans and so on in this period if you wanted to. So those are all, some things that occurred to me. Gordon, how about you?
Well, there's a couple of ideas that I'd have. One is I'd probably want to start pulling from. There's a subgenre of mystery fiction called occult detective fiction. So it's like William Hope Hodgson's Carnacki. There's a character named Jules de Grandin by a writer named Seabury Quinn. It's basically, imagine if Sherlock Holmes investigated stuff, and sometimes they're ghosts, or sometimes they're supernatural. I think I'd want to, because 1898 is around the time where Holmes is, Conan Doyle has quit writing around 1895, but you have all these like spin-offs and people trying to do their best to do it. So, it's like if Sherlock Holmes was Dark Shadows back in the day, a lot of these other detectives were Strange Paradise, to use a mixed metaphor. So I'd want to bring in a character. I'd probably just have Thayer David play him, but I might have somebody else play him I'd want to introduce the idea of somebody coming in, and maybe he's on the trail of Petofi, and he missed Petofi, but he becomes involved in intrigue at that point. I would also want to. I do a slight variation on the Jekyll and Hyde story with Cyrus Longworth and John Yeager, and the variation is I'd pull from. There's a Charles Beaumont short story called In His Image, where it's about a guy. He goes back to his old town. He's with his wife, and everything about this old town is his memories are false. It's like, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. But he learns a name, and he goes to this other guy who looks exactly like him. And it turns out this gentleman was curious about, well, can I create, is there a way to remove evil impulses from someone? And so he decides to create a robot with no evil impulses in it, because he was always concerned. And in the background, there's like a mass killer. What I'd want to do is I do that storyline, but I'd have it created by magic, and I would also. And it'd be a bit of an anachronism, because we'd be beating David Cronenberg's The Brood to the punch. But it would be the idea that Longworth is putting all his dark side into this. He's thinking he's putting he's exercising his evil. So it's kind of a parallel of the Adam story, except John Yeager is this creation. And just to mess with the fans, I'd have Humbert Allen. I'd have John Yeager look exactly like Nicholas Blair, and maybe even have Humbert Allen Estrado play him.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well. And there is an advantage in a Jekyll Hyde type story by having an entirely different actor, and that is that the two characters can interact.
Mm-hmm. Really, really cool stuff, guys. Links to the Dark Shadows Day book Unbound is going to be in the description box. Links to Gordon's Amazon page is going to be in the description box. Guys, tomorrow night it's Circle of Iron with Butch. Sunday, episode 1000. Are we good for Sunday night at 11?
Roll them.
It's our last milestone episode. And then we can go back to making random picks. So, first of all, thank you, gentlemen, both. It has been really fun discussing these episodes. I'll see you guys tomorrow night.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.